Good evening, and right before we dive in, I'd like to quickly mention that over on EpochTV, our awesome no-censorship video platform, I just published an interview between myself and Dr. Robert Malone, discussing some of the methods that he uses for spike protein detox. Now, obviously, that type of a topic is not really welcome here on YouTube with their regime of censorship, and so if you'd like to check it out, I published that interview over on EpochTV. The link will be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you check it out. And now, getting back to today's topic, on Monday of this week, Joe Biden officially ended the COVID-19 national emergency. Because you see, while most people here in America might not even have realized it, but for the past 3 years now, up until Monday of this week, the federal government had in place a COVID national emergency, which granted the federal government certain emergency powers, among which was to be able to modify the requirements surrounding Medicare, Medicaid, as well as HIPAA regulations. Now, if you remember, the COVID national emergency was first enacted on March 13th of 2020 by President Trump. However, as the famous saying goes, nothing lasts longer than a temporary government program. And as such, from then until now, the COVID national emergency has been renewed on 13 separate occasions. Even after, I should mention, the administration admitted that the pandemic was actually over. Here's, for instance, what Joe Biden said during a 60 Minutes interview last September, right before he renewed the emergency order 3 more times. Quote, "The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it, but the pandemic is over. If you notice, no one's wearing masks. Everybody seems to be in pretty good shape, and so I think it's changing." However, it is worth noting that besides the fact that Joe Biden renewed the national emergency 3 more times after making that statement, well, here in New York City at least, if you happen to ride the subway, you'll notice that about a third of the people on the subway are still wearing a mask to this very day. Regardless, setting that aside, now that the COVID national emergency has officially ended, the big question is, what is the next emergency? And it just so happens that the CDC has recently put out a new warning regarding a new drug-resistant fungus that they say presents a serious global health threat. According to officials within the CDC, Candida auris is a rare fungal disease that can easily spread through either contact with a contaminated surface and or person to person. And once someone gets infected, this fungal disease can cause severe illness, particularly for those who already have weakened immune systems, sort of like COVID. Furthermore, in some rare cases, the fungal yeast can actually enter a person's bloodstream and spread throughout the entire body, causing serious infections in the blood, the heart, the brain, the eyes, the bones, as well as other parts of the body that can actually turn fatal. And in terms of the fatality rate, the data shows that between 30 to 60% of the people diagnosed with this fungal disease have actually died. Although there are 2 caveats to these numbers. The first is that the data pool is very limited because this is a rare disease. And secondly, healthy people tend to not get sick with C. auris, Candida auris, and therefore that 30 to 60% fatality rate, it really does refer to people who were infected after already having a compromised immune system, sort of like COVID. Now, in terms of why the CDC is issuing a warning about this relatively obscure disease, well, that's threefold. First of all, C. auris is very resistant to most medications. Second of all, it's hard to identify using standard laboratory methods, and therefore medical staff would have to make a special point to test for it. And third of all, it has been rapidly causing outbreaks in the healthcare settings throughout the country, which would make sense, because in healthcare settings, you oftentimes have a bunch of immunocompromised people huddled together in close quarters. Now, in terms of the highest risk factors, people who have been hospitalized in healthcare facilities for long periods of time, especially those who are on either breathing tubes, feeding tubes, and or have some kind of a catheter going into their body, they appear to be at the highest risk for C. auris. Now, the obvious question still remains, though. Why did the CDC issue this warning now? And the reason, well, it has to do with the fact that this fungal disease has been spreading rapidly over the last several years. Here's part of what the CDC's statement said regarding this particular matter. Quote, "Clinical cases have increased each year since 2016, with the most rapid rise occurring during 2020 to 2021. The CDC has continued to see an increase in case counts for 2022. During 2019 to 2021, 17 states identified their first C. auris case ever. Nationwide, clinical cases rose from 476 in 2019 to 1,471 in 2021. Screening cases tripled from 2020 to 2021 for a total of 4,041. Then, up on your screen, you can see a color-coded map of the cases throughout the U.S., showing that over half of the states in the U.S. have at least one reported case of Candida auris. And while the total case counts are still measured only in the thousands, The problem with these fungal diseases is that they have the potential to increase exponentially, which appears to be exactly what happened between the last several years when the case numbers quite literally doubled year over year. In fact, as you saw up on your screen a moment ago, in the year 2021, there were only 1,471 cases nationwide. However, take a look at this report from just a few months ago showing how the state of Nevada alone, just the one state of Nevada, now has over 1,000 cases.
Spread from surfaces like bed rails or pieces of equipment, the fungus can also survive on the skin. Now in Nevada, where there's more than 1,000 cases, there are signs of community spread.
A lot of these patients are coming in with the infection already, and they have no previous medical history. So in those cases, we know they had to get it somewhere.
Furthermore, besides the doubling year over year in the number of cases, when you look at a separate data set from the CDC's Annals of Internal Medicine, you find that the number of screening cases in which the fungus is detected but is not actively causing infection actually tripled from 2020 to 2021. In this situation, it actually led the lead researcher on the CDC's paper to say this, quote, "The rapid rise in geographic spread of cases is concerning and emphasizes the need for continued surveillance, expanded lab capacity, quicker diagnostic tests, and adherence to proven infection prevention and control." And perhaps, to top it all off, a new emergency order from the federal government. Now, as I was doing research for today's episode, I came across a large fungal outbreak that took place just yesterday over in the state of Michigan. It took place over at a large paper mill in the northwest part of the state, where suddenly you had a large number of employees calling out sick for pneumonia-like symptoms. But it turned out that it wasn't really pneumonia. Local health officials conducted an investigation and found nearly 100 cases of suspected fungal infections to have been spread throughout the entirety of the factory. So far, in this one paper mill, it's 19 confirmed cases and 74 probable cases. However, it is worth noting that this fungus was different from the one that we've been discussing so far. This Michigan paper mill, it had a particular mold called blastomycus, which caused a disease called blastomycosis. It likewise affects people with weakened immune systems. Here's a short news clip from the local Michigan area describing what happened in this paper mill.
PHDM was first notified on February 28th of an atypical pneumonia among several mill workers. That number infected quickly increased to 8 by March 7th, 15 by March 9th, and now 35. The state averages 25 cases a year. The health department says blastomycosis is one of 78 reportable communicable diseases.
And the reason that I wanted to bring up this particular case in Michigan is twofold. For one, is because I assume that many people who watched our episode tonight might learn about the case out in Michigan and assume that it's the same fungus that we're discussing here. And so I just wanted to make a point of mentioning that this was a case of a different fungus than the one that was issued by the CDC's warning. But then also, this paper mill case was a good reminder, at least to me, of how quickly these types of funguses can actually spread. Because even in the case of C. auris, Candida auris, it seems to be concentrated in healthcare facilities. It's a fungus after all, so it has the capacity to spread rapidly anywhere, including even at a factory workplace. Regardless, if you'd like to read more about anything that we've discussed in today's episode, I'll throw all my research notes down into the description box below this video so you can peruse them at your own leisure. And then lastly, I should mention that right now, whether it's the rate of inflation, the banking crisis, or the myriad of other problems that we're seeing, they're all pushing the price of gold to new all-time highs. And so along that line, I'd like to introduce the sponsor of today's episode, which is an awesome company that sold me this beautiful coin. This right here is an American Walking Liberty 1-ounce gold coin. And typically, I order at least one of these from our sponsor, American Hartford Gold, every single month. The reason I do so is because, as you likely know, the inflation rate in this country is the highest that has been in, the last 40 years now. Everything like the price of food, the price of housing, the price of gas is absolutely going through the roof. And in fact, market experts like the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he's not only predicting a recession, but he's even using words like unprecedented economic hurricane. And so listen, I absolutely do not give you any financial advice, but I would recommend that you do what I do, which is pick up the phone and call American Hartford Gold. Their super friendly staff can help you diversify your portfolio by either getting physical gold and physical silver delivered directly to your doorstep like I do, or deposited directly into your IRA and your 401k accounts. They make the entire process super simple. And actually, besides me, they have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau with quite literally thousands of satisfied clients around the country. And best of all, to our viewers, to the viewers of Facts Matter, they are currently throwing in $2,500 worth of free silver on your first qualifying order. So giving them a call is an absolute no-brainer. So pick up the phone and call 866-242-2352. That's 866-242-2352. Or text Roman to 65532. Their link will also be down in the description box below. And then let's head on back to the studio. And then lastly, just as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I recently published an awesome interview between myself and Dr. Robert Malone talking about some of the methods that he's discovered for spike protein detox. Now, obviously, that type of a topic is not really welcome here on YouTube with their regime of censorship. In fact, I don't even feel comfortable showing you the trailer for that interview. Otherwise, this whole video, this whole episode might get taken down wholesale. And so if you'd like to check out that awesome interview between myself and Dr. Robert Malone, I published it exclusively over on EpochTV, our no censorship video platform. The link will be right there at the very top of the description box. Click on it and you can watch the interview right away. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and most importantly, stay free.